Parents strongly caution the following programs are intended for mature audiences over the age of 18.
If you grew up in the early 2000s, then you know that staying up late to watch television was just the coolest thing. You'd be half asleep on the couch, waiting to see what weird or random thing would come on next. But there was one specific thing you were waiting for.
Adult Swim. All kids out of the pool.
Most people remember the shows when they think about Adult Swim. You had Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Space Ghost Coast to Coast, or home movies. And you also had some of the best anime out there. You had Cowboy Bebop, Fooly Cooly, and then you also had Samurai Champloo, which was just some of the coolest ever put to screen. But for me, Adult Swim was never really about the shows. It was all the stuff in between that stuck with me the most. So let's talk about the bumps. Most networks used them like throwaway clips. They were those quick stay tuned or coming up next transitions introducing the next show. Channels like Cartoon Network or Toonami were one of the first to push that envelope. Cartoon Network had its Cartoon Network City Bumps, where you had like all your favorite characters living in the same world. And Toonami also did their own thing, where you had Tom guiding you through the cosmos in his spaceship talking about anime and introducing the next few shows. But Adult Swim didn't just kinda push the envelope, they completely reinvented the whole thing. Adult Swim bumps weren't loud or flashy, they didn't really try to grab your attention, they just existed, and somehow that's what made them unforgettable. They would take something completely random, like a picture of a door with the words baggage room on it, and pair it with some of the best music I've ever heard. But at the very beginning, Adult Swim bumps are very different. They are very famous for their all kids out of the pool bumps, which you probably know if you're familiar with Adult Swim.
Adult Swim. All kids out of the pool.
It's a classic, but I don't really care about those bumps too much. I think the magic kinda started a few years later. Because by the mid-2000s, the bumps really leveled up. They started using those minimalist black screens with white text. These text bumps kinda did it all. They announced lineup, teased new shows, or they even replied to viewer emails. They always had this snarky laid-back energy that really made them stand out. These bumps weren't just filler anymore, they were part of the channel's personality. Over the years, the bumps went through many more different phases, and talking about all of those would make this video like 10 hours long, but I can tell you about a few of my favorites. First up, the picture bumps. These might be my all-time favorites, but it's also kinda generic to say that because I think the picture bumps are everyone's favorites. You would have shots of cities, landscapes, empty rooms, or sometimes even just anime stills from shows that were currently airing, like Inuyasha or Samurai Champloo. They were incredibly simple but always looked really cool. And then you also had the bumps from Adult Swim Action, or ACTN for short. Adult Swim Action focused mainly on action-heavy late-night anime and shows that didn't fit into Toonami. Some of them were animated with this bold mixed media pop art style, like this one, while others used the classic picture bump format, but you know, with ACTN instead of Adult Swim, like this one. Even though they weren't drastically different, the Adult Swim Action bumps brought their own unique energy, and they don't get nearly enough recognition as, you know, all the mainstream bumps that you probably know, like this one, or this one, or this one. They're one of the coolest parts of Adult Swim history, and I hope more people will start to appreciate them. And then obviously, I can't talk about Adult Swim bumps without mentioning the music. You had music from MF Doom, Dilla, All Flying Lotus, and they were the core of why Adult Swim felt the way that it did. Pair their music with visuals like, I don't know, some empty street, and it feels like you stepped into another world. And it wasn't just the big names, there were so many bumps with amazing music that don't get talked about enough. There's this bump with a shot of Shinjuku streetlights, featuring a track by Doctor Who Dad, which is, you know, it's kinda ironic considering that no one knows who he is. Or the unforgettable Marilyn Set Me Free by Casino vs. Japan, which is the city skyline at sunrise and the network just telling you to go to bed. Because let's be real, you really shouldn't be awake at this hour. Adult Swim had this way of putting you onto music you didn't even know you needed. They didn't just rely on big names, they gave a platform to underrated artists, and it felt like they were talking to you personally and recommending you some of the coolest artists out there. And honestly, you know, they nailed it. But not everything on Adult Swim was chill, lo-fi beats to study and relax to. Some of the bumps were straight up terrifying, like nightmare fuel terrifying. There are quite a few really terrifying Adult Swim bumps, and Adult Swim probably did that in a way to try and scare off all the kids that are still up, and if you were unlucky enough to fall asleep watching something your mom definitely didn't want you watching, like, I don't know, Family Guy or Futurama, you might have been woken up by something like this. But I also feel like those bumps were kinda counterproductive, because let's be honest, who would stop watching after seeing something like this? Looking back, I think that's what made Adult Swim so cool. Back then there was no skipping ads. You watched everything from the shows to the commercials, and obviously also those bumps. And somehow those bumps became just as important as the shows. Maybe even more. Those bumps actually left such an impact that people, including myself, started making their own bumps, trying to recreate that same vibe that Adult Swim had. I can even show you some, like this one, or this one, and I especially like this one. Even now, there's a lot of fans keeping that energy alive with fan-made bumps that just completely nail that Adult Swim vibe. Working on this video, I realized that it's not just about the bumps themselves, it's about what they represent. They're more than just random nostalgia, they're a connection to a different time. And now with the internet, if you vaguely remember something from back then, you can probably find it and think, wow, I remember this exact thing. It's not just about nostalgia though. I think it's something that really stuck with us. And I don't think there will ever be anything like Adult Swim bumps ever again. Hopefully, this video inspires you to revisit some of your favorite bumps. Or, if you have never seen Adult Swim bumps, to go down the rabbit hole, because I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thanks for watching, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.